We live in a fast-paced and hectic world where it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Master Your Life, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining host and her guests give practical advice that you can use every day in the quest to master your life. Now, here's your host, Leaha Mattinson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I'm host Leaha Mattinson. First of all, start out with the show by just saying thank you to each and every one of you who've tuned in from wherever it is that you are on this beautiful planet. Thank you for being with me, and thank you for being a fan of the show. You know, we're at about 120,000 people listening weekly to the show now, and I just want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you who've spent time during your day listening to the guests that I have on that really are here with their whole heart in trying to help people to find their path to wellness from within. So thank you again, and thank you for sharing all the episodes that you have done over the span of the last 6 years to help us to grow the audience to be what it is today, you know, starting from that first listener to now having 120,000. It's just incredible. So thank you, all of you, each and every one of you who've been a part of that. And so without further ado, to add to that awesome vibration, I have on this episode, Dr. David Hardy. Welcome, Dr. Dave. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again, Leah.
That's wonderful. So Dr. Dave is saying again, because if you haven't caught our past 5 interviews, we've been talking about neurology and functional neurology. Dr. David Hardy is a functional neurologist, a specialty with 10,000 extra postdoctoral hours in functional neurology. And so we've been doing this series. What started out as a, hey, come on back on the show and let's have a chit chat, Dave, has turned into this really deep and meaningful series about how people can activate their, understand their brain better and how to activate the brain to have the best health that you can possibly have from the moment of your inception to the grave. And so we're kind of coming to the end of life part of that series. So if you've missed the previous interviews, please do go back and tune into those. And so Dave, without further ado, we're talking about the second part sort of end of life stuff, or how we as biological beings exit the planet, and what our brain looks like what kind of brain changes do we have. But maybe you'd like to just recap for folks so they can follow along if they haven't had a chance to listen into the previous podcast, the Coles notes, and then we'll jump into kind of the meat of today's presentation.
For sure, absolutely. So with brain, basically, we started off with brain development. So the way the brain and nervous system develops is then going to, of course, lead into how we perform to the next phase of our life, and also basically how things can get damaged more easily if they don't develop properly. And then from there, we went into, well, how we develop, how we perform, how we get injured or not injured is going to lead into the next phase of our life, where things start to decline, or then when we start to develop different disorders or diseases that are actually named disorders. And then that leads us to this part of the section, to actually look back and see, well, what's happened to somebody's brain throughout all this process, and of course, what damage has been caused more after the fact, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I love this. It's so important for people to tune into this, because it wasn't that long ago, you know, for 400 years, science said the brain doesn't heal itself. You know, so it's really relatively new to a lot of people to consider that they can actually make their brain better, or even that they have some sort of control over what's going on between their ears. And I remember 13 years ago when I got my diagnosis for a genetic neurological disease, that I went, what? I need to figure out how to make myself well. And so at that time, when I dove into the research, people were starting to write more about functional neurology, how our brain is not as hardwired as one might have thought. So I want people who've been struggling with neurological function to really hang in there during this episode. Get out your pen and paper so you can make notes, because this is one of the things when people have trouble with their neurology is your memory might be not that great. So it's really important to pause, get the tools that are going to help you to remember this. And also, if you're not a strong auditory learner, I want to encourage you to get onto the masteryourlife.ca website, because then you can watch this video and you can watch Dr. Dave and I as we discuss this, and then you can pause it, which maybe you won't be able to do that on the podcast. So just get onto the version that's going to serve you the best. And then we'll coast into just how wonderful and magnificent this brain is. And yes, we do die. That is part of life, but we can still have the healthiest brain possible. And then we can also then create this wonderful, more happy life as well at the same time. So let's just hop off from that then, Dr. Dave, and talk about the brain at the end stage of life. What kinds of things might we be experiencing? What changes, even if they're subtle, what kind of age and stage do those things maybe sort of start to happen at?
Right. It kind of depends on what, once again, how much damage is being caused with different disorders. But what we're seeing commonly is going to be basically a backup or excess buildup of different proteins and basically junk in the brain. And of course, this is being labeled in all sorts of different pathologies, whether it's tauopathies, whether it's chronic traumatic encephalopathies, even in Alzheimer's. You start to see all this buildup of different proteins. And there's basically two theories on this. One is that it's an abnormal response where all these proteins are basically building up. And then there's the clearance aspect of it, where the nervous system isn't able to get rid of all this stuff that's accumulating. So basically with both of these, though, it's going to be a combination that anytime we've got either an injury or a virus, bacteria, or toxins, or increased metabolic activity, we're of course going to produce different proteins, and we're also going to produce proteins that in small amounts would have been protective to the brain. And now that there's this overreactive response, they build up even more. And then of course the system can't clear them out. So there's all sorts of debates with that. And it kind of too depends on what aspect of healthcare you're coming at, whether you're looking for the next maybe big drug discovery to clear out a protein, or whether you're more in the preventative model where it's like, no, this is an abnormal process going on, and well, how do we fix it during our life so that we don't end up with all this stuff going on. And
let's talk about those two things. So if people are contemplating, which boat am I in, Dr. Dave? Am I somebody who's preventative, or am I somebody who's looking for the drug therapy, waiting for the magic drug to be created by pharma?
right.
What does the different sort of pathway look like, or could it look like? Let's just play around a little bit.
Well, yeah, one thing comes to my mind. I went on to this one webinar, and I was looking really forward to it. It was looking at epigenetic factors, and it was put on by one of the top science research journals. And I get on this call, and they didn't mention one thing about epigenetics.
What?
I know, it's strange, right?
Jeez.
They didn't say how these genes were turned on or off.
What did they talk about?
They talked about, well, if you find out with this gene producing this protein, then of course you can come up with something to basically inhibit that protein. So it was the exact same old model, just applied with, of course, the buzz phrase being epigenetics. And
Sure, a sexy headline, epigenetics.
yeah.
Let's talk about what epigenetics are, because people might even be going, What is that?
What's this?
What is epigenetics? What is it? Because a lot of people might even just go, well, I don't even know what that is.
Right.
So some fancy name.
Yeah. So epi is above, and then genetics being, of course, the coding material to make everything in the human body. And yeah, so basically with epigenetics, you're looking at what actually turns on and off different genes.
Mm-hmm.
And because once again, you can have instructions to make this beautiful cake, but you may or may not use some of the ingredients, or some of the recipes you might change up. And it all kind of depends on some of the ingredients you have, whether you follow that recipe to the absolute T. And well, the same in the human body, there's multiple different recipes and combination of things. And your DNA is a lot more dynamic than we even anticipated before. So a gene can always be turned on and off. Sometimes when a gene's turned on, though, it's near impossible to get it to turn off in some cases. At that point in time, it's more pathological. But for common daily activities, the vast majority of genes are going to be turned on and off by multiple different communication systems into the cell. And we use one example of just activating a neuron. Well, if you activate a neuron, you activate these low receptors on the cells, AMPA and NMDA receptors,
Mm-hmm.
and then they send secondary chemical messengers into the nucleus, which then will signal to the DNA and everything else what needs to be produced. And then that will produce messenger RNA, which then, of course, gets converted into the code for different proteins. And then you have different protein expression. And then from there, the cell becomes healthier because it's being activated, and then it's going to signal to the next cell. So just by activating different cells, you're changing then the expression of the actual genes, which is the great thing about the brain being plastic. And the activation model and stimulating cells is really key in when you look at some of these step-by-step diagrams of how you actually basically get a gene to start being expressed.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun because you can look at your brain then as your, Rolls Royce, whatever your favorite car is, imagine your brain is that thing or whatever, the thing. And that the most beautiful, perfect, lovely, awesome thing that you can imagine that it is. And that whatever it is that you're doing that to the Rolls Royce. I'll use that as the example of your life. So if you're driving your Rolls Royce, through a car wash that has all those really rough brushes on it, and you're just like, as you go through, like, is that something you would actually really do to your Rolls Royce? Yet we do it with our bodies all the time. It's just like we do things that are really rough. We do things that are not very, caring for. And then sometimes when we get scratches in the paint job, we also think that we can't repair it. And sometimes, to your point at the beginning, it's like if something's too far gone, it might be really hard to actually buff it out to get it to be gone. But there are things that we can do to improve the situation in a lot of cases. And so that's why I started this show, Master Your Life, like 6 years ago, was really because of this message of people thinking they couldn't do anything. And I'm about their health and wellness. And I'm going, oh, no, it's not true. You can do so much. Come on. And so it's very, you can, and it's been withheld. It's been withheld. So to our point of this conversation about epigenetics and thinking you're going to the scientific, webinar that's going to help you in your study, in your profession, you go on, and instead of that, you get this other lecture, and regular everyday people who are trying to figure out how to be well. If you're having a hard time figuring out the slickness of it all, then regular Joe Schmo, and I'm in that category, what hope do we have except to find people who actually can speak past all of that stuff and go, okay, what are sort of these functional things that we can do to be well? Because clearly going to an epigenetic webinar might not be one of them. If They're not going to talk about it. So epigenetics guys would, just to give you some like what it would look like every day, you might get up in the morning and stretch and say something awesome to yourself, like, oh, I'm so fabulous and this day is wonderful and I love my body and I love my brain and I love this person I'm sleeping with. I love my family. I love the country I live in, like those kind of positive messages. Stretching, moving your body, taking nice deep breaths, like inhaling and exhaling, being in gratitude. Those are some basic practices. Riding your bike, going for a walk, falling in love, hugging people. Hugging and breathing are really good things. Being out in nature, so even we're living in, Dr. Dave and I are actually, sort of neighbors here in Alberta, Canada. So we're both living in snowy conditions right now, but, we can walk outside still and have a nice inhale of the air that we have. And, if we're feeling adventurous, do some snow angels, looking at the stars at night, spending time outdoors in nature. Those are all free. Was there a price tag on any of that stuff that I just said out loud there, Dave? Dr. Dave?
Not at all. Yeah.
Well, I got to rethink my strategy because it should cost a lot more.
That's one of the great things about being on this show and talking about all of this is that, not only are we trying to give hope to people, we're also trying to, and especially with what you're doing, trying to give people actual actions to do. Mm-hmm. Because with a lot of people, you give them hope, and if nothing occurs after that, then it's followed by despair.
Yes.
And then you get in this cycle where it's extremely difficult for a person to really pick themselves back up. Mm-hmm. And, just those lifestyle changes, they're going to be slow at the start. And it all kind of depends too where you are on that spectrum of basically peak performer to being in a really rough spot with something going on. And it's the little things that we put in daily that are going to impact our lives more. And like we went into exercise too, and like you can over exercise easily. And the biggest thing though is to do it frequently throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And maybe with everything going on right now with a change of work status might actually help that if we're able to get people more into the habit of, okay, you do a chunk of little task and then you do 5-10 minutes of activity in between that. And then you go back to chunking whatever work activity in front of the computer you have to get done and things like that. And obviously computer work being done earlier in the morning and then decreasing the screen time later in the day, and just following those natural cycles that have kind of been missed because of how things have been set up in the workplace for many years. And hopefully this disruption leads to something positive.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so for people who are actually at that, end, what we'll call end stage of life, those habits really don't need to change. So if you're a caretaker or you're a professional caretaker, or you've got somebody at home who's starting, you're noticing some symptoms of things, cognitive malfunctions, breathing issues, confusion. I see a lot of people like around that stress and confusion thing when there's changes and they're trying to figure out how to adapt to whatever the new reality is. And, so it's then when they'll get hiccuped out of the habit of whatever they used to do and start doing stuff like watching a lot of TV. Weather changes do that here in Canada because it's not just so easy to get out, even like with your walker, let's say, and go out for a walk. And I know lots and lots of people have balance issues. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have balance issues long before they are old. They have balance issues. So they look outside, they go, well, I don't want to go out there. That looks too high risk. So you cut out Mother Nature and you cut out your walk, right? Just boom, like that. And those are the top two healing modalities: getting sun on your pineal gland on the top of your head, like getting sunshine on the top of your head. What does sunshine activate, Dave?
It activates so much. Like it's undersold. And the reason it's undersold, of course, is because too much of a good thing can lead to bad things. So of course, people start thinking about cancer and skin cancer. But sunlight is energy, and it's going to help with the conversion of serotonin into melatonin. So serotonin, kind of our body neurotransmitter, melatonin being more for our sleep-wake cycles. But UV light, the small spectrum of it, actually is absorbed by basically, well, our tryptophan, our phenylalanine, and our tyrosine. So these are parts of their amino acids, and amino acids build up proteins. So that's one of the energy wavelengths that's absorbed most by those. So those neurotransmitters, basically they're found in serotonin and dopamine. So right there, that's telling us that for those neurotransmitters, we need that frequency of energy for it to change functions. And the analogy I used last time with proteins is basically for it to change structure, it needs an energy or something to make it do that. And there's now a huge field opening up in basically the structures of different proteins, and of course the different configurations of them. And I think with like different, well, basically laser, but biophotomodulation is we're going to see how we can change some of these proteins, or possibly break them down if they're accumulating too much. So that's becoming a fast developing field, especially because it is so complex. Like you can have the instructions which are the DNA for all these proteins, but how they react in the body is much different, and how they react to the incoming environment is huge as well. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it's
important. It's important because a lot of people need to know the science before they'll get into doing the experimentations. So what I would encourage people to do, and I was cute. I mean, obviously we all feel great when we sit in the sun. That's why people go to sunny destinations for their vacations. Then they get there, they burn the heck out of themselves. Then they lay on the beach dead for the next 3 days trying to recover from the sunburn. That's not what we're talking about here. So it's not. So it's the daily taking in of that sunshine. And my dad, who is 83, still at home with Huntington's disease, I notice about him. So one of the markers of youth is your ability to get up and down off the ground.
Yes.
And how quickly you can do that. So people might go, "Oh, that's crazy, Leah." It's true. So one of the things we do is we lay on the floor and we get up. We lay on the floor and we get up. And I was a gymnastics coach for many years as well, like 25 years. So it was like part of this. It's just like you lay down on the ground and you get up. And the reason for do that is multifold. But so my father, people will go 83 years old and he's still getting up and down off the ground. Yes, because that's part of the way that he maintains his balance and his strength. But this summer, I caught him laying down on the ground, like in the house, and he was laying in a beam of light so that the light actually hit his head. And I thought, now, is that just a one-off kind of weird thing? Like that was just so strange. And he was just all very relaxed, very chill. And also with Huntington's disease, unless you're asleep, you're moving. So he was sound asleep because he wasn't moving. And I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. He's making his own med bed. So it didn't just happen one time, though. It happens all the time. So when I watch him, he'll track where the sunshine is. He'll move a little piece of furniture and he'll get himself sat in there. That's without any instruction.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right. So we're just, if we get out of people's way also, because a lot of people could have said, "Oh, get up off the floor. That's not right." It's like, no, he is actually taking care of his health. He knows what he needs to do. It's when people do things to interfere with that. Well, that looks strange, or that's weird, or whatever. No, actually, he's not on any medications. He's 83 with this thing. The person who's weird is the person who's not able to do that. So here's a news flash, right? It's just the medicine that is available to us all the time. So if we go outside in Canada and it's cold outside, you might want to wear earmuffs instead of wearing a toque, just something to think about. So you can have 10 or 15 minutes of sunshine on your head. And for those of you who are bald, I don't have a solution necessarily, because maybe that's going to be a little too much for you.
Right.
Transparent toque might be an entire new business.
Yeah, we've got to look at different ways too to get some of that energy into the body during those cold months. So yeah, the Norwegian and Scandinavian countries kind of hacked that way back when they started using different saunas. Once again, you're getting that energy into the body. And then of course there's now different at-home devices with either light therapies or with pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. And the big thing though is that all of this needs to be done at a specific frequency, intensity, duration that's going to be healthy for a person. So obviously myself being blonde or yourself being redhead, going out in the sun for long periods of time is very not good for us.
Right.
So,
yes.
But small little doses throughout the day is extremely healthy for us. And then for other people who have darker complexions, they need even more sunlight. And then I think one of the reason people burn, especially us come spring, summertime, or that vacation in the winter, is that we've allowed our vitamin D levels to get low. And then when we do actually get the energy stimulation going in, we don't actually have the hormones to actually support that excess energy coming in. So yeah, we need to kind of both make sure that vitamin D levels aren't going down too much and that we're actually getting the energy stimulation as well. Because yeah, it's very easy to overdo things like that. And it makes a world of difference. And just little hacks like that are going to keep people more in tune with what their bodies can handle. And then it's not overwhelming with the exercises or the lifestyle changes.
Right, right. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because this is maybe a test of aging, is and brain function. A lot of people are very interested in doing puzzles and games, and I'll say like Sudoku, or what would be another example? There's a few. I don't know if I can name labeled games because I don't want to get into trouble, but there's some brain training games that say that they are actually healing your brain or improving your brain. Is that true, or is it novelty? So is it a novel experience? And sure, maybe true is not a very fair question either, because we don't really know what's going on with that big old brain, most of it anyway. Right? There's only a very small percentage of it that we really know, oh yeah, that's healing. The rest is quite mysterious. But what's the science say so far, Dr. Dave, on those kinds of brain entrainment?
Right.
Tools?
Yeah, they're for the most part mental tasks. And the amount of the brain that actually is aware consciously and can perform mental tasks is a small portion of the brain. So yes, you can keep yourself sharp for that portion of the brain a little bit better. So yeah, they're beneficial, absolutely. But the other thing is we're probably going to only pick up games that we're good at. Right. So for the most part, we're just training parts of our brain that already work well and trying to keep them going, when we're probably letting the rest of the brain kind of decay and go downhill. So when we talk about brain function, yeah, we need to look at the stimulation. So getting the neurons to fire in multiple centers of the brain. And then of course, well, it's not just wires. We need to support healthy living tissue. And a big part of that's going to be the vasculature as well. So yeah, we've got all these tiny little blood vessels in our brain that feed all these neurons that what it needs. And of course, well, small vascular disease becomes an issue with aging as well. So not being able to actually get the right nutrients up to the brain. So it becomes this combination of, okay, what can we feed ourselves to have healthy living tissue? And then how do we stimulate those parts? And we still need to look at sensory enrichment and movement as the big key stimulating factors that keep cells healthy and alive. Whether it's in the brain or whether it's in the heart, lungs, what other portions of the body. Yeah, we need that sensory stimulation, that movement, and that enrichment. And then we need to make sure that, yeah, we're decreasing the inflammation coming into the system and feeding the proper nutrients and support to actually have healthy, viable living tissue. And we can make it extremely simple. Eat real food.
Mm-hmm.
Move and be active.
Right.
Don't overdo it though. And work on the breathing and as the biggest nutrients you can get into the brain and body. And then from there, and it goes a lot smoother.
Yeah. Sage words of wisdom. So when people are coming to the, let's say, the end stages of life, or that, the last parts of their life, what would be things that we would notice would maybe be changing for ourselves, and then also for people who we might be caretaking? And is there anything that we can do to help to support good neurological health? Like, how can we help?
Right. Yeah, we're going to notice postural changes and the changes in gait first. And that's going to be happening once again decades before deterioration.
So that's first. That's kind of first.
Absolutely it is. Yeah. Yeah, we come into the world in this cute little fetal posture, and then we grow a brain and we start to our shoulders go back and we become more upright. And then as we start to decline, we start to see that, once again, kind of that old man posture, hunched over, and things changing that way. So we start to notice the difference between extensor tone, so muscles that keep us upright, and flexor tone, muscles that make us bent over, hunched, and those tell us a ton. And we can see it when we're stressed out too. Like when you're stressed out, how do you sit in a desk? Your shoulders are forward, your head's forward, you're achy. And then how do you feel when you're in a good mood and things are working properly? Well, you're upright, you're confident, and you move better. So right there, that's kind of a barometer of how somebody's feeling is. You can see them across the street and not even see their facial expressions and kind of tell what mood they're in by the way they're moving or standing or walking. And you're going to see those long before any major diagnosis with these diseases, is because the only nerves that fire out of the brain go to muscles and glands. And we're going to see it in the postural systems first. So that's going to be big.
Yeah, this is so important. I want people just to really consider I'm a grandma, 53 years old, with 4 little grandbabes. And then I have children that are in their 20s and stepkids that are in their 30s. And so I've watched this whole generation of people, and then my parents who are in their 70s and 80s, and then every iteration between. So I watch what people's physical posture is, their stature is, because it's been my business for a number of years to do that. But what concerns me is when I see young people who are at that teenage age, and I know that's not the show we're talking about today, but I want people to contemplate this a little bit, is that teenagers now look like postural in their posture. They look like old people.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how they carry themselves. Mm-hmm. It's hugely concerning. It's like,
we're starting to see it now in the general population too, where life expectancy is starting to go the other direction now. And yeah, how we develop is going to be how we perform, and how we perform is going to tell us how we age and decline. And the key is, well, at what point in our lives do we want that decline to actually happen? Like, even with the horrible genetic disease that you've been talking about, Huntington's disease. Now, why do some people get it early? Well, yeah, maybe they're more genetically predisposed to that, but probably the vast majority of them, it's once again lifestyle making the disease progress quicker and sooner.
Yeah.
than when it would otherwise. And
Yes.
we're probably going to see a lot more of that. And yeah, just seeing some of the postural things too, and just seeing how we're also ramping up ourselves with a lot more intense and too long of a duration with things like intense light at wrong periods of time. I think is really going to cause some of those brain areas to decline a lot sooner and a lot wider of a population. So we're probably going to see a huge spike and rise in a lot of these degenerative diseases that we didn't see before much. So
for those people who are interested in kind of, in turning that ship around, because I do I'll call it PT with my dad, physical therapy stuff with dad every day. It's like okay, let's go for a walk and, stand up this way, hold that thing this way, and get him to do the structure correctly of walking upright. And tucking the tailbone under a little bit. But for people who are going, I don't even know how to stand straight properly. I'm going to do a big shout out to my Qigong master, 𝙑𝙗𝙩𝙩𝙡𝙬, who I've affiliated with. He's on my website, so you can find his courses. I don't teach Qigong anymore. And because there's just too many people who need this, and there's somebody who's already a master and doing it. So go to the masteryourlife.ca website stuff. I love 𝙑𝙑𝙩𝙩𝙡𝙬 and Qigong, I think, is the second one down. And you can see all the courses that are there for you to restore your body. And it is I say I had life before Qigong and after Qigong, because my body was pretty good then. And then I had it all broke down from all the Western training. And then, but Qigong is very playful and fun. No, it's not Tai Chi. You don't have to be able to move in a certain pattern and pass an exam. It's nothing like that. It is playful, fun, healing, powerful. And it's my daily practice. So for people say to me, what do you do every day? No, I don't go to the gym. No, I don't run 5,000 miles. I do Qigong, and I do it, to your point, Dave, several times throughout the day. I do a lot of standing. I stand and do a proper postural stance so that my body is aligned up and down, and that my pelvic floor is properly aligned as much of the time as possible, so that I'm really aware of how I hold myself and how I hold my posture, because I found that when I wasn't, I was feeling depressed. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like, I don't want to feel like this. Like, no, it's not for me. Not for me. So I know that other people are the same. It's like we're all wired very much emotionally in a similar fashion, human beings. So when you see people that are all hunched over and not feeling good at end of life or whatever else, for them to actually look at you with a smile on their face would be very rare, because they're not feeling that great. They're not. So whatever we can do to help them to pick up your chin, put your shoulders back, try to sit up straight. Even if it's for little moments during the day, they'll get stronger. What are some of the things that you recommend, Dr. Dave?
Yeah, if somebody is once again more in the decline stage with unstable neurons, then doing passive activities with them where you're moving some of their joints, and that's going to be less stimulation, so they're more likely to be able to handle it. And this is what I do with people that have like extremely severe concussions or in a bad place, is we always go passive activities first and then progress them into active activities where they're doing the exercises. Music is always a huge one too with aging. It just seems to be one of those pathways that stay more intact. So you're able to put music on and actually get people to move or be in a better place and mood. So there's a lot of therapeutic effects with music, sound, and once again, it's just another frequency of stimulation energy going into different parts of the brain. So we really do need to enrich our lives with that stimulation and really put people in the most comfortable place they can be. And I think too, just kind of a different topic is that even though we're starting to see decline and happen more and everything else, I also think we're living in a society that's absolutely more and more afraid of death and dying and less likely to actually have a discussion about it. And yeah, it's the work that different grief counselors do, and then also different hospice centers, I think is extremely important, and just how we want to be comfortable in our own years when things start to decline is a conversation we have to have before that even comes close to happening.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, how many people have had that discussion, or in their families, or even with yourself? That's going.
Right.
What is my plan for the end of things? We're fortunate in our family, again, probably because of the Huntington's, that it prompted the conversations much sooner. About where people were going to be, what people's wishes were really, and there are more options available for people who want to, end their life in different ways. And that was a whole discussion that I would have never thought that I'd be having in my lifetime. So there's all kinds of things to consider that maybe you hadn't before, and also where you're going to be, because with this whole shenaniganifest, I'll call it, people who are in care are not necessarily going to be with anybody when they pass away. And so this becomes then a family discussion. And what's your family standard? Is there, there's a lot of people rallying, I think, to their family now that wouldn't have just a couple of years ago. So that's kind of neat to see, where they go, I don't know that it's good enough to just leave grandma and grandpa or mom and dad in the home, because that was becoming very much the norm,
Right.
And yeah, exactly. They can go live their life over there and they're doing their thing over there. But now it's making us rethink these very important conversations. So thanks for bringing that up, because it is a peace of mind.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Stuff.
And the whole thing about evidence-based care has really been bastardized lately, because evidence-based care has 3 pillars to it. And the first one's research, the second's clinical decision making by your healthcare practitioner, but the third one's the most important, and that is patient preference. And that discussion needs to be brought back up, that evidence-based care is all 3 of those pillars put together. And I think the patient preference part needs to really be investigated more and discussed better.
So I'm writing that down, because it's like, that is everything that is going on right now, right? Is our own
Absolutely.
personal preference. It's like, what do we prefer in our life and in our health? And reclaiming some of that. So in the patient preference, or the person preference, what do you see as some of the themes that are coming up for people? Do you see any themes in your practice that you go, oh, people are coming now for more care around this certain thing because they are the ones who've chosen it for themselves?
I think once again, it's more polarized. I think you have people who want to kind of sit back and wait for things to happen to them with their health.
Right.
And of course, trade in more comforts and pleasures versus their health. And then you have people that are way more proactive about things and taking control of their own health. So it really has kind of divided the patients, people even farther, is that there's one, of course, disease model out there where things happen to you and it's unfortunate. And then there's the other model where you're proactive and hopefully if something does happen, you're better attuned to handle it.
Mhm.
And that goes across the board, whether it's a genetic disorder or whether it's lifestyle diseases or anything else. And once again, it really comes down to where do you want to be later in life too. And that's tough when things are stressful and things aren't going well, or there's a lot of fear around, is because then you feel like you have less control over it. And it's harder for you to take control over what you can do. And that becomes kind of the part of it too, that hopefully we're able to give people some hope, but more than that, some momentum to build up their health and get more active and feel better.
Yeah.
At the end of it, it's all about how you feel. So if you're able to feel better because you're healthy versus feeling better because you had a beer or some junk food to kind of cope, it's a difference. And when it comes to diet and lifestyle choices, I'm one of those people. It's like, yeah, there's things I don't do that aren't healthy. There's things I do that aren't healthy. But if I can trade in one of those unhealthy things for a healthy one, like food being a classic example, is I look for the foods that I love, that taste good, that are healthy.
Yeah.
And then I don't get in this pattern of, okay, well, let's open a bag of chips because I already have something there delicious that I like to eat. So I think we can do the same with a lot of activities as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting people to write it down. What is it that you want to look like, feel like, experience at even in a year from now? We're down to the last 42 seconds. I want to take 1 second to talk about the nutrition a tiny bit, because people are struggling so much in this area. We have a nutraceutical on our website called Quadrimune, and another one called nanostilbene, a third one called Projuvenal. The first one, Quadrimune, specifically helps to rebalance that immune function. And so it helps your body at the underlying health stage of things. The nanostilbene helps people with that chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And anyone who wants to check out these patents for things, it helps with all kinds of other neurological things. You can find that on the website. So masteryourlife.ca. I'm a nerd, totally. And I have to live this stuff because I say to everyone, I have more skin in the game than anybody else. I've tried a ton of stuff out. And some of it's been really great and some of it not so hot, but that's why, the show continues on and we keep bringing on great guests to talk about things, talk about the evolution of how you might be able to improve your nutrition to make your brain better, how you can move your body better in order to create a better brain in a non-harmful way to your current engineering. Because again, that's not something we're taught in a Western culture. It's no pain, no gain, So Dave, again, thank you so much for coming on as a guest, because when people can think about their brains, I say my body's great because I take care of my brain. That's it. It's not the other way around. I don't take care of my body and then my brain actually got okay. I went, what am I going to do to have a good brain? Because all of the manifestations of a not good brain to me seem not awesome. I'm just like, that doesn't seem awesome. And I'm not, I have beer. I'll drink a beer for sure. Oh, 100%. So if people go, oh, you're like a teetotaling, whatever. No, absolutely not. But healthy. Yes, definitely. And there's a balance in all those things. So Dr. Dave, thank you so much for your wisdom. We could just keep on talking. So, I probably am going to hit him up after the show to see if I can have him on again. Until next time, though, do you have any final words?
Yeah, keep it simple. Basically, eat real food. Enrich your life with as many sensory opportunities as you can, and move in a way that makes you feel good and better.
Beautiful. Hang out with good people.
Yes.
That's a good one. Awesome. All right, everyone, love yourselves, love each other, mind your minds. That's all for us. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you for being a part of our program today. Master Your Life is a presentation of Leaha Mattinson Enterprises, Inc. Join us next time on Master Your Life, helping you to discover the very best of you.